All right. I saw this statistic, and boy, was I floored about it. On any given day in Quebec, 6% of students are absent from school. That's 84,000 students a day. Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, is it COVID-alized? Why are these students missing school, right? Is it the sniffles? Is it the tummy ache? Why are students missing school? Now, the pandemic has been rough on everyone's mental health, especially young people's. They've had their social lives, education turned upside down over the last 2 years. We're only just starting to understand the fallout. But one thing is clear, they're anxious. With more, we go to Connie Scuccimarri, pediatric psychologist at the Montreal Children's Hospital. Connie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
So let's look at this number, 84,000 students a day, 6% of students are absent from school. And a lot of this has to do with anxiety and mental health. Is that the case?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've heard the statistics over and over again in the past 2 years. 50% of our youth are currently experiencing elevated levels of psychological distress. So this comes in the form of anxiety and depressive symptoms. So, yes, we know that a lot of kids with anxiety and depression will avoid school because they have all kinds of symptoms. They're not feeling well. In their head, in their heart, and in their tummy. You know, we say that often because they're experiencing a lot of emotions, and this often translates in making them feel sick. And what you do when you're feeling sick, you avoid. You stay home, and you try to get better. So I'm not surprised about the statistics. It's very sad, but it's not surprising.
So let me ask you, do you think this is, COVID just exacerbated a problem that was already happening? Do you think the numbers would be similar, COVID or not? Or is this something that is really shot through the roof because of the pandemic?
Yes, I think that kids have always had anxiety and depression, but the pandemic has exacerbated the numbers. Unfortunately, they have gone through so many changes in the past 2 years, and it's not developmentally expected for them to have to deal with so many changes in the past 2 years. The uncertainty, the isolation, like you mentioned, it really takes a toll on adolescents, especially.
And in your own practice, have you noticed an increase of patients coming in with anxiety?
Absolutely. It's outstanding. The waiting lists are very long. Unfortunately, we need more psychologists to service these kids because we need them to get specialized treatment and not only go on antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication. Sometimes it's warranted to decrease reactivity, but we really think that psychotherapy is the main treatment of choice. We really are unfortunately seeing very high numbers, and I'm sure you've also seen the statistics of emergency visits increase in the past year, and unfortunately suicide attempts in the past 2 years have increased too. So the numbers are not good, and if we don't take care of kids and teenagers with their anxiety, unfortunately it can turn into depression, and you know what depression can lead. So we need to talk about this more because there are so many kids out there that have these problems, and it's not only the pandemic. We know these problems were there before, school pressures, family pressures. And we've heard a lot about domestic violence. That affects the kids and how they can learn and how they can problem solve with their peers. Romantic partners during adolescence is a lot of stress for kids, but you know what? They're keeping it inside. They're not talking about it. It's hard to get services. So this factor grows and sometimes leads to very catastrophic consequences.
We are with Connie Scuccimarri, pediatric psychologist at the Montreal Children's Hospital, talking about anxiety in children, in teenagers. So, Connie, what you just said there, sort of, to me, it's almost like it's not necessarily the pandemic. That life as a teen is just difficult now. Is it more difficult today than it was 20 years ago, or did we just hide it better?
Well, there's a lot of factors in interplay. I think we had problems 20 years ago for sure. but things are worse after the pandemic. We can't deny the effect of the pandemic has increased psychological distress in kids. Before the pandemic, they still dealt with their anxiety and depressive symptoms. Again, we have to review those factors. It's multidimensional. So we've always had family stressors, but with the pandemic, we've heard that parents are super stressed. They've lost their jobs. They've had to, scramble for lots of issues. So, maybe they're not as present as they used to be. School pressures. You're hearing more and more that kids are not getting into the CEGEP of their choice. They're working so hard. That's extremely stressful in the teenage years when you're studying and you're afraid you're not going to get into college. I mean, that's new. And social media, the comparisons with these bodies that are on the social media. I mean, it's so not representative of what kids are looking, and health, healthy looks, healthy body images. So yes, again, we have to remember this is a more stressful time.
And Connie, how does anxiety manifest itself in a teenager differently than an adult?
Well, there's change in moods in teens and adults for sure are similar, people say, but kids tend to withdraw. So you might miss work when you're an adult, and that's very, very bad. But kids missing school is the withdrawn factor. Them feeling sick. We also hear adults feeling sick, but in kids, they're going to have changes in their behaviors. Like they're not going to have a good night rest. It's going to be restless sleep. They're going to wake up often. They're going to, sometimes there are going to be changes in their behavior, in their eating behaviors. They're going to eat more comfort food, or they're going to not eat food because they want to go on a diet to look like those images on social media. There's going to be the changes in behavior that they used to talk to their parents, and now they don't talk to their parents. They don't have fun doing the activities that they used to want to have fun. Mm-hmm. So it's very important to be aware, talk to your kids, and avoid avoidance.
and avoid avoidance. So I want to get to that because, the one thing that I'm curious about is, in Quebec, we kept our schools open a lot. Schools stayed open where everything else was closing. They kept the schools open. But I had heard from someone, I remember on a previous show I discussed with how it was the extracurricular activities that were closed down. So you go there, you still get to go to school. That's a good thing. But the sports were stopped. Going to the mall was stopped. Hanging out at a friend's house stopped. Is that the bigger issue here? Maybe not the school aspect, but all of the other things that adolescents do, children do with their classmates that they could no longer do.
Exactly. That's so important, Elias. I really think that, that broke their routine. They didn't have their exit of that activity, the need for an outlet. Some of them were in their sports, and that's very healthy. We know there's chemical reaction when you do sports. It's very helpful. The endorphins are released. Kids who were used to doing art classes, they didn't have their art classes. So, yes, that played a big factor. But remember, when kids go to school, there's one part of school, which is academics. But yes, like you said, the social part is so important. And they were wearing masks, and then they were told not to go into these activities. So it was a little bit artificial. It was, many of them felt that, they hid themselves without that mask. And when they were online, they didn't put their cameras on. It wasn't the same. There was too many changes. There still are many changes. It's still a lot of uncertainty. We need to put a lot of focus on helping these kids and teenagers. They're our future. We need to invest. This is not a cost. We have to look at it as an investment. We need much more resources. We need people in schools that are specialized to give the treatment where they are and not just have to go out to the CLSC or the hospitals as a last resort. We really need to get more services, psychologists, specialized care teams, involved with these kids to prevent these problems. Teach them about their emotions, about problem solving. Because, when you don't have your sports, you still have all this pent up anger or energy. How are you going to get that out? Of course, we don't want another confinement, but, in life, we might have another horrible obstacle in life, and we need to teach our kids how to cope with these emotions. it's sad, but we're hearing a lot about abuse in relationships. We don't talk about that, but these are kids that are learning how to develop relationships, romantic partners. And there's a study that recently came out from Calgary that it's 1 in every 3 kids that are experiencing some type of abuse in their relationships, and this is very scary. So we need to talk about it.
Connie, listen, you say very scary, and I'm just, I'm thinking about all of these things that our teenagers are going through, and I'm saying, wow, could I just throw something out at you?
Sure.
Let's say you're a parent, and maybe you're a parent that's in a good situation, right? You and your spouse, you're in a good place. The pandemic hasn't been too hard. You've got a home that is survived through the pandemic. Do you think maybe a good idea would be to invite friends of your child over? Like, have the weather's getting better.
Yes.
Have people in the backyard.
Yes.
Give your children more opportunities to talk and laugh and just be kids with their friends.
Absolutely. And be a good role model. So many parents are stressed, and it's normal. They're going through their own problems, and we want them to get help, and help is out there for them. But, like you said, you're a neighbor, you're a friend, you're a coach. These are all special people in children's and adolescents' lives. You need to be a role model of how to talk to each other, how to problem solve. And like you said, have fun, go outdoors, experience nature. It's so wonderful that you mentioned that.
Connie, listen, it was a real pleasure talking to you. I went long with you because I found the topic so fascinating and interesting. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.